This is the life that I want to create. This is what I want to align with. This is the version of me I want to align with. And this version where I keep rejecting myself over and over and over and over no longer fits into my life. And that's when we step into that sense of choice. That's when we step into that sense of freedom. Let's talk about your fear of rejection and how it is absolutely holding you back in more than just your business, but in all areas of your life. And we oftentimes think about this, and it's one of the most common things when I ask my clients is, why aren't you putting yourself out there? And what I hear most often is, I'm scared of rejection. And you have to really go deeper than that, or you're just going to keep spinning in these same wheels, because rejection's never going to feel good. So whenever you keep running from rejection, but you don't actually understand what's underneath the rejection that you're really afraid of, that you're really holding yourself back from, then you will keep repeating the same habits and patterns over and over and over and over again. So I really want to dive deeper into what that looks like for you and how you can understand that for yourself. Because it's not something that I can just tell you. It's not something that you can just say, I'm over rejection. Because rejection is more than just that surface level. It's more than just the no we get, whether that's in a relationship or in our business or with a spouse, whatever that is. It's more than just that simple no. It's what that no means to us that we really have to begin to explore, and we have to understand on a personal level. And so we think about rejection, we think maybe it's embarrassment. We think that someone's just not wanting us. But when we go deeper than that, when we start to not take it as personal, it's not somebody else saying no to us, right? We can begin to separate from it. But what does that no actually mean to you? So when you really start to dive into this concept of no, and you ask yourself this question for yourself, what does no actually mean to you? What does that no of rejection mean? So if you are a coach, which is what I do, and you're putting yourself out there on social media and people aren't liking your post, or people aren't responding, or you're getting on sales calls and you're just continually putting yourself out there and you're getting these no's and you're feeling this sense of rejection and you're feeling yourself contract, you have to ask, what does that no mean to me? And for me personally in my life, when I first started putting myself out there, I would put things out and then I would delete them. Right? So I'd put something out on social media and then I would delete it like 15 minutes later if nobody had liked it. And I was like, well, that wasn't very good. Nobody had liked it. I really hope that they didn't see it. That was my big thing. Like, oh, maybe nobody saw it. So I could keep it at that. Well, and I would say, well, let me just kind of rework it. Let me share something different. That wasn't really the right one, or my tone didn't come off right. But what I was really scared of is not the no of the rejection. It was somebody finding out that I wasn't good enough or smart enough. That was my story, right? I never felt smart enough, capable enough, good enough. And you'll hear me say this over and over and over and over again. And you have to find what your story is that's trickling up into these areas. So for me, I pulled back because I was just like, I don't want them to find out how dumb I am. I don't want them to finally see that I'm not capable. So it's easier for me to pull back and not feel that rejection. But down to the heart of it, it wasn't the rejection from everyone else I was afraid of experiencing. It was me confirming what I already thought about myself, which is that I wasn't good enough and that I was stupid. And so you have to be able to track these patterns in your life, or you will continue to make the same mistakes. And you'll pull back and you won't move forward with your business and you won't put yourself out there and you'll be too scared to try. And you're going to make all of these excuses about, I will do this once I have this certification, once I have this, once I'm finally complete, then I will be able to accomplish what I'm looking to have. So that sense of rejection now becomes this facade, this story that we have, instead of going deeper than that. Because most people will stop at that. Well, you're scared of rejection. Well, just do it. Right? That's the common advice that you're going to get told. Just do it. Put yourself out there. But that's not going to make it very far. Maybe you get a couple of posts in, but then you start to pull back. Then you start to contract. Then you start to hide. Then you start to self-sabotage in different areas of your life. Then you start to really, really not be present in what you're working on doing and putting out to the world, because we're hiding it under the fact that we're scared of rejection. When it's not about rejection, it's not about rejection from other people. It's about the rejection from ourselves. It's about us validating and confirming our stories that we tell ourselves over and over and over. It's about validating and confirming that in the world outside of us. So let's take a couple of steps back here and let's look at what that looks like for you in your life. Like for me, using business as a mirror is really helpful because I start to see how I'm showing up or not showing up in the world. But you can do this in relationships as well. How are you protecting yourself? What's the shell that you put up so you don't have to step in and own your own authentic nature, your being, your essence? How are you holding yourself back from doing that? And how is that truly impacting your life? And this isn't about shame or blame or thinking, oh, I wish I wasn't like this, because here's the thing, you are like this, you are doing this. These are habits that you do have on repeat. So we're not going to go victim to that. We're going to step into, what do I do about it? How do I shift it? It's here, it's present, that's fine. I see it. I'm not going to try to reject it or repress it. I'm going to dive head first into it and finally make the shifts that I want to make. So you're looking at this form of rejection. Think about something in your life that you actually want to step into, that you want to do, whether that's a relationship, whether that's a business aspect, maybe that's putting yourself on social media, maybe it's really being honest with yourself and you're really scared of what you're going to find. Everything comes back to this. We create these barriers, we create these masks that we wear in society, and we're so scared about what's going to happen if someone sees us when we drop that mask. But really, we're scared of what it's going to feel like if we don't have those masks present. So you have to start to evaluate that for yourself. Of what is this? What am I doing? What can I shift? What can I see more of within me? How can I stop rejecting myself? Because anything we feel internally is something that we think that's coming from the outside. It's something that we feel internally. It's something in here that we absolutely have to address. So you're rejecting yourself over and over and over and over and over. You don't think you're smart enough. You don't think you're capable. You think you sound stupid. You think that you don't look good on camera, or that you're not skinny enough, or that you're not good enough, or that you're not rich enough to show up in the world. Those are all self-created stories. And you just keep experiencing them and validating them through your own mind and through your own experience, and by fearing that somebody else is going to see that. But here's the thing, when you stop calling yourself any of those things and you stop identifying with them, it doesn't matter what anyone else is saying or doing or thinking about you. It just becomes their experience of you, and you get to have your own experience of you. And the biggest piece that you need to take away today is how to stop experiencing yourself in the negative way. Right? We have all these negatives and positives, and sometimes we tell ourselves those positive things, but more often than not, we focus on the negative. We focus on the negative aspects of our quality, of our character, of our essence, of our being. And we always think, I need to improve, I need to improve, I need to improve, right? This is the Achilles heel of personal development and spiritual growth, or whatever it is you want to call it, is because we're always looking for a problem. The brain absolutely needs a problem to solve. It needs something to do. It's a magnificent part of us, and its job is to solve problems. So what happens when there's not a problem? It creates a problem, right? You're not skinny enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not this enough, right? You're not capable, you're stupid. It creates these problems that now we have to solve or we can focus on. And so when you're facing something like rejection, you have to go so much deeper than that. This is a game. This is an internal game that we have to play. And we have to begin to pick it apart layer by layer to understand it. What does this actually mean to me? What does the no mean to me? What no am I saying to myself? That's what we get to. Right? So when you say, what does this no mean to me? And it's reflected back to you. Now you say, no, what does the no to myself? Well, the no to myself is, I don't want to put my voice out there. It feels too vulnerable. Right? It feels too vulnerable to put myself out there in that way, because then I'm exposed. And then if I'm exposed, then other people are going to see all of the things I don't like about myself. So instead of just biting it and saying, you know what, I'm going to do it anyway, that doesn't solve any problems. Yes, there's a level of exposure therapy there. But what's going to happen when, Jane comes along and says, oh, you're so dumb. Why would you even post that? right? Now you just validate it. So you have to change that relationship with yourself. You have to change that relationship with the no. And that comes from where you're saying no to yourself. So I hope you're following along here, because we're coming always back to the self. We're always coming back to the no we're telling ourselves and how we can shift that. How can I begin to love that piece of me? How can I begin to say yes to that piece of me that I'm so worried about other people seeing? How can I see this more positively instead of negatively? So now this does not mean we sugarcoat. It does not mean we suppress. It does not mean we push things aside. It means we start to look at things much more neutrally. If there's a negative part of it, there's a positive as well. And so we start to weigh both of those experiences. And then we step into how we can choose to experience that in the world. So there's so many different layers here, but you have to come back to this understanding and this truth telling with yourself that you actually have control over your output. Now, you can't control what comes into your brain. You can't control the thought that just originates out of nowhere. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, what do we do with that once it's here? So if I have this negative thought that says, I'm scared of rejection, people aren't going to like me, I'm not going to put myself out there, well, I can jump on that train and I can ride it all day long, baby. I can stay on it and I can make it go faster and faster and faster and really build that momentum. Or I can say, that's interesting. That's an interesting thought. How can I step into something else? How can I step into my authentic version of me and still continue to put myself out there? How can I not reject myself? How can I not feel rejection by stepping into who I am and sharing that with the world? How do I not be afraid of that? And then we start to pick that apart. And we look at that from positive and negative. Because again, you're not getting on the train that's going to make you spiral. Unless you want to. I'm not here to take anything away from you. Okay? We're not getting on the spiral train. You're going to be listening this far if you wanted to stay on that train. Right? The preference is to step off to a much more neutral space where we can see, okay, this is the negative and this is the positive. This is how I'm saying no to myself, and this is how I want to say yes to myself. This is the life that I want to create. This is what I want to align with. This is the version of me I want to align with. And this version where I keep rejecting myself over and over and over and over no longer fits into my life. And that's when we step into that sense of choice. That's when we step into that sense of freedom. And we start to really go from this contracted state where we can't let anyone in, that becomes so expansive that it's not that we let everyone in, it's that there are things that can just come through us. And we start to experience life so much more freely because we're in this expanded state. So we're not just allowing things in to contract and then get hauled back up by that rejection, because we're just open, we're not rejecting ourselves, and things are able to flow through us. So I want to sum up what we've talked about, because it can be a lot. So we're understanding how you're rejecting yourself always. You're looking at your life and you're saying, what do I want to change? What do I want to be different? And how do I want to put myself out there? How do I want to change my relationship? How do I want to change my business? How do I want to change anything? And where am I rejecting myself? How do I stop rejecting who I am? And how do I accept it? How do I stop judging that for what it is? And how do I just accept it for what it is? And we just start to change that dynamic. We start to see the choice. We start to see the thought spiral that takes us way down a path that we don't want to go down. And we start to go down a different, more supportive path for ourselves. And it all comes back to you not rejecting you. And by not saying no to pieces of you. So I really challenge you to start exploring that. What would that look like if you just started saying yes and loving all the different spaces within you? If you stopped looking for the rejection from the external because you were no longer rejecting yourself in the internal. And I would love to know what really stands out for you and what are the things that you really need to shift? What needs to be different for you to say yes? What questions do you have about saying yes to yourself? What does this look like in your life? I would love to know.